Okay, that should be back. Sorry if you're having trouble with the stream. I don't know if it's my internet connection or if it's just... or if it's Twitch or what. Sorry about that. Anyway, yeah, I mean, for those of you who might be thinking of doing Patreon or something at some point, at least now you know. there's issues and things to be wary of and aware of, and to know that the number you see on every artist or whatever they are, performer or whatever, musician, whatever you see there is not quite what they're actually making, so... But I mean, it's the same with any kind of crowdfunding sort of thing. Kickstarter is the same way. Also, keep in mind, like, if you're doing a Patreon, like, the amount of money you're getting is pre-tax money. you gotta then take it upon yourself to go pay your quarterly taxes, write the government a check every quarter, because it's nice and easy when you're, working for a company and they just automatically deduct your taxes for you, and state tax, federal tax, Social Security. But then you gotta go do that on your own when you're freelancing and self-employed. You have to pay your self-employment tax too, which is basically Social Security. And then if you want, like, 401k and all that stuff, you gotta, or IRA or something, you gotta handle that all yourself. And your healthcare, gotta go find healthcare, shop around for it, buy it, shop for new stuff every year because the price goes up dramatically every single time. It's kind of a pain in the butt, but it's worth it in the end to be your own boss and do your own thing. Gig art, is that right? Am I pronouncing that right? Do you have any kind of set stream schedule or frequency, or are you more streaming when you feel like it's still... No set schedule. I try to give lots of forewarning for patrons if they want to come join my streams in the patron feed. But otherwise, it's really just based on where I am with my comic progress and stuff, and when I can fit it in. I figure bouncing around a little bit is actually better, so that may be frustrating for some people, but overall I want to make sure that people in different time zones get a chance to come if they want to. So I was for a while doing things at starting at 9 or 10 o'clock at night, Central Time, because I'm a night owl, but figured I'd do an earlier one this month. So some other people who maybe haven't had a chance to make it here could do that. $300 billion degrees says, one thing I heard was being considered was either charging the first cycle immediately or holding back pledge benefits until the charges go through. Other people have used third-party programs to email stuff for paid pledges, which seems to be a big pain. Yeah, the thing is, when you're sending something out to patrons, you don't want to have to keep sending messages to people over and over again. You want to be able to make it available and then be able to link to it in the future, so new patrons and people coming in who maybe don't know where to look for things can find stuff. So messaging people like every month, like, here are the rewards, gets kind of tedious, and you end up spamming people, and you don't really want to do that. So yeah, there's that. But I do think that the logical solution to this would be to, I mean, it's not a complete solution because people can still work around it, but it would certainly minimize it to charge right away for new pledges, so that as soon as they, they're paying for the access they get to your backstage stuff. And at least they've paid for that one. You can guarantee that they've at least paid 1 month worth of their pledge. But to see what you've made available, but yeah, so far it doesn't work that way. So you can just pretend pledge, go collect all the stuff you want, and then hit the road. Or remain pretend pledged and just use an expired credit card or something, and then sit there and hopefully I'm not giving any shady figures out there, any ideas, but not you guys, of course, but you've all been wonderful, and I appreciate your support very much. But I'm sure it's probably no secret at this point that you can cheat the Patreon system. Ella says, I had someone pledge $1 and then remove it before it got charged, and then reinstate it again yesterday to get access to my feed. It's just really crappy of people to do that because creators get notifications every single time someone edits a pledge. So it's not like we can't see people who do it. I know you can block patrons, but it's still a really dishonest thing to do. It doesn't mean that everybody who's doing things like that is trying to cheat you. Frequently, in fact, what will happen is the people who are trying to cheat you will pledge at the highest tier that they can so that they get as much access to as many rewards as they can. And so maybe $1 might not be someone who's actually trying to cheat you. It's hard to say. I don't really know the circumstances, so maybe they were, but maybe they were just trying to fly under the radar by making a small pledge and getting access to your blog. But yeah, I would be more wary of people who pledge higher amounts but like after 2 or 3 months they're still sitting there but they've never actually paid anything. Those are the people to message and go, hey, what you doing? Other times I'm sure that it's just like people space out and forget that they don't know how to fix the issue with their card or whatever, and they intended to, and they aren't even checking your feed for new stuff or anything. But it's just hard to tell, so it can be frustrating. And often people will make honest mistakes. I've had patrons before send me messages apologizing because they forgot to update their card and the charge got declined or something. That's no problem, it happens. But nothing's perfect in this world. But I can't complain. I'm very pleased. Patreon has made all the difference in my life. and obviously, well, the patrons who support my work. So thank you to you guys. Hello, Ragark, welcome. Ella, you're launching a new Patreon shortly, are you not? When does that go up? Onai says, I was utterly unaware of all that. We did a Kickstarter. They are not all are cracked up to be either. Yeah, I know people make fake pledges on Kickstarter too and screw you up. And then, of course, you have to pay taxes on all that money coming in. And a lot of them, if it all comes in before you have a chance to spend it, you know, on business-related expenses and stuff, so... I'm sure Kickstarter can be quite a headache, and I'm sure people get impatient and dispute their contributions, and yeah. Ragark says, I was halfway through connecting and sorting out the sound contraption. What's the issue with Patreon? Oh, nothing. I mean, just, I don't know if it's even really, if I would say it's an issue with Patreon, it's just that there are ways to cheat, basically. Because the way it works now is you pledge an amount and then you don't get charged until, I mean, most Patreon campaigns are a monthly thing. I mean, you can charge by creation and stuff too, but most of them do monthly. But you know, you don't get charged right away when you pledge, but you do get access to, for instance, the patron-only feed, which is generally where all creators will be posting their, you know, patron exclusive stuff. So you can gain access to that without actually giving any money, and then you can just decline your pledge every month and pretend you're a patron and basically, you know, cheat. And at the same time, it also makes it look like the patron is, or the creator is earning a lot more than they actually are when you have a bunch of people doing that. So it's just I feel like I'm being whiny. I'm really not trying to do that. I'm just saying, if you're going to do a Patreon, be aware of these things, because I did not know that until I got into it. But I mean, any sort of crowdfunding thing is going to have problems like this, so. Yeah, I mean, it wouldn't even really be that bad if there weren't like these seemingly organized efforts to go around and collect everything every artist makes this way, and then just like put a torrent out there, torrent download version of it out there. So it's just like this, I don't know, I can't understand how people can be so deliberately malicious and just wish to undercut your, you know, your means of earning a living. What level of resentment or just outright sociopathy would drive you to do that? But again, nothing new. I mean, we've all been denizens of the internet for a long time. We know there's pirates out there. I guess it just seems especially low when you're doing it to people who are just, individual freelancers trying to get by, and not to, giant music label, or not that that's right either. You shouldn't do that either, but I don't know. It's just disheartening because you want to go around thinking that most people are basically good, but sometimes you run into situations where I don't know. I still think that. I still think most people are. I'm not quite that cynical yet, but there certainly is no small percentage of people who are not interested in doing the right thing. Or even some who will go out of their way to be destructive. Like Rocky. Although usually he means well. Usually. Sometimes. Sometimes he means well. Evil Industrialist says, interesting, I can see this as being used for other nefarious purposes as well, faking a wider following and grassroots support to give the illusion of a mandate. Yeah, in fact, there was a thing on, I read some stuff about Twitter not long ago too, where there's these groups who create all kinds of fake accounts and will follow you with thousands of followers. You can actually purchase followers for yourself. They're fake followers, but it makes you look like you have some something important to say, I guess. It's like vanity followers or something. It's really, I don't know. Social media is a strange thing. Yeah, that's the other thing, is that you set goals for yourself, and for instance, I set my full-time goal, but I couldn't set it while knowing exactly what that amount actually would mean. That amount is the amount other people see when they visit your Patreon page, oh, this person is receiving this much a month, but it's not what you're receiving a month. It's not even close, really. And so if actually, it's a very good thing that I exceeded my goal, because if I thought I had calculated enough slight overage in that I can go full-time goal to account for Stripe fees and decline pledges and things like that, but it turns out I did not. It's hard to gauge how many fake patrons am I going to have, how many people are going to decline each month, what percentage. And so yeah, if I hadn't exceeded that, and I had actually gone full-time on the $3,800 that I had set originally, I would be in trouble. I'd have to be taking on additional freelance work and stuff like that still to make ends meet, because I wouldn't actually be getting $3,800 a month. I'd be getting more like half that. Yeah, they've made some changes there, so at least there's that. Good night, Ella. Thanks for joining us here. Reckerman says after a creator has had their account up a while, they should implement some machine learning algorithms to estimate the actual pledge amount received versus the stated amount. Maybe, I don't know. I think Patreon's doing the best they can with it. There's a lot of guesswork involved, and they can't predict even. Obviously they know what percentage they take, but any given month, like for instance, I've had months where it looks like my pledge amount has gone up between then and the last month, but I've actually earned less that month because, like, for whatever reason, some larger percentage of patrons declined their pledge. So you can't really you can only really ever guess. Well, make an educated guess, I suppose, but there's no perfect solution to it. But I'm kind of loath to keep complaining because I really don't want to make it sound like it's been a negative experience overall. It certainly has not been that. And if you've got like this labor of love that you've been sweating over and toiling over, and you want to make it your thing in life, then I would look into Patreon, but just be wary that it's not a perfect system. It can't be. Hi, Fokadat. Welcome. Long day at work, I guess, huh? Matt says they should take money initially or at the beginning of the month and not allow cancellations a certain period before the end. Well, I think cancellations they should continue to allow at any point. I mean, you never can tell, like, you get laid off or, some medical emergency comes up and you don't want to give $50 to a comic artist because you got a $5,000 hospital bill to pay or something. That's certainly understandable if you need to cancel last minute. emergencies and things happen. But I do think, yeah, when you pledge at the beginning, like the initial pledge, they should charge initially, because you immediately get access to all the stuff that creator has put out there, so for patrons only. And so, yeah, it seems to make sense that should be the default setting for monthly accounts. We'll see though what happens. Just give it to Mordecai, yeah. He'd just turn around and criticize me for my questionable financial decisions. Not that I really take any big risks or anything. The biggest risk I ever took was just leaving my job to do this. But it has worked out well. I'm lucky and grateful. I try to work hard to make it worthwhile for those of you who are putting some funds toward it. $300 billion degrees says, I don't expect Mordecai would be happy with people breaking financial obligations to him. Not to him, but to me, I don't know. I don't know if he would care all that much. An obligation to me is not necessarily an obligation to him, because I draw a lot of things that embarrass him, so. Onai says, I'm interested in this new site called Fig. Double Fine are using it for Psychonauts too. It's proper investment with potential returns on your investments. Interesting. Sometimes you need to step back from the games industry and de-stress. It's a crazy gig. Yes, indeed. I don't think I know anyone who's worked in the game industry for more than a few years who doesn't feel like pretty burned out by it, honestly. I think for a lot of my old coworkers, the solution was to move up into more like executive or managerial positions, which a lot of them did do eventually. And they're doing very well by themselves, that's for sure. But yeah, it's almost like to be a worker bee for years at a time takes a lot out of you. Matt says, if he were real, you'd probably be the first person he'd end. Yeah, that way I can't draw pictures of him drinking bunny hugs and fawning over Victor or something. Ragark says, so Tracy, when are you talking to Bandai and getting 1,000 action figures of our classic Lackadaisy characters? Haha, right. I suppose when I have enough of an audience to warrant producing that many, that much merchandise, which probably will be never, but. That's okay. Sometimes I look at the things that have happened to big titles like that, and I'm like, I don't really want that for Lackadaisy. The assumption is that, like, the biggest, best thing you could do is make a film out of your stuff, but meanwhile you probably get, with a wide release, you get the most exposure that way. Also, like, I don't know, sullies a lot of things, or ruins them, or takes the magic out of them, or I don't know. I like private little things that feel like my own, independent little things. "23 years on high? Have you been in the game industry that long? That's crazy. Wow. Well, I have to tip my hat to you for that, if you've been in the games industry for that long and you've survived. And if you're still going strong, then good for you. Because I know that's not easy. I was in the game industry for 15 years, and that was quite enough. I had enough at about probably 8 or 9 years. But, you gotta pay your bills, so. Yeah, the Victor figurine, his knees don't bend. He's not really an action figure. He's just a statue. Insane says, how long has this been going on? Been going since 5 p.m. Central Time. There was a post about it. I posted about a week ago to schedule it, and then I sent out a message to patrons too. Sorry if I missed you somehow, or you didn't get the message. Freckle McFlurry. Yeah, I don't really want to. I don't think I would ever want to go McDonald's with with Lackadaisy. Disney or McDonald's for me, thanks. I don't want to relinquish control of it to some corporate entity where they make creative decisions by committee. Onai says, so you're more Watterson than Davis then? Yeah, more Watterson than Schultz at least. Davis too, I suppose. I don't think I'm quite I think Watterson takes it to quite an extreme. He's basically a recluse at this point, but which is, I don't have an issue with it, but I also don't, when it comes to little bits of merchandise and thing that I have control over, I'm okay with that, but like handing it off to some great big company and saying, yeah, do what you want, make a lot of money, I don't really, it's too personal a project for me. I would be uncomfortable doing things like that, so I'm not quite, not such a purist as Watterson, but certainly more in that ballpark. Not that anyone's like knocking down the door to, merchandise Lackadaisy or something. I get offers now and then from online producers of this and that, but Matt says, but Tracy, everyone knows the best way to be hip with the kids with a Z is to form a committee of gray hats that run focus groups. Yeah, they've made amazing things like Ice Age 7. There you go. My argument in a nutshell. Insane says, are any of the characters progressive in their personal beliefs, or are they standard for the time? I'd say most of them probably fall into standard-ish, which is unfortunate because 20s were not... I mean, they were more progressive than certainly the Victorian or Edwardian eras prior, but not really the pinnacle of social liberalism. Zib, Fokadat says Zib seems rather progressive by 1920 standards. Yeah, he's pretty laid back and pretty okay with everyone, and also kind of an experimentalist himself. So he's not really one to judge. I think Rocky's a little bit similar to him in that way. Not that he's adventurous in the same way. He's adventurous, but not in the same way Zib is. But he's been a lot of weird places and spent enough time scraping by that I don't think he feels... Actually, he's if he's judgmental of anyone, it's people like Wick. Ronai says, heck, much of the 70s TV raises more than a few eyebrows. The zeitgeist has moved on so much, really. Yeah, it keeps moving. Keeps on changing. Even stuff like, when I was a kid, like, I don't know, must have been, they had Saturday morning cartoons on, and a lot of it was reruns of old Looney Tunes stuff, and you would occasionally see some stuff that was like, wow. Like nowadays, how you cannot put that on TV. Like even Speedy Gonzales, like I don't think they will dare put him on TV anymore. But I mean, even like you'd see characters occasionally in blackface, and when I was a little kid, I didn't even understand what that was. Like, why is this character dressed up like that? What is this thing? But yeah, that's we've certainly improved, I think, on that stuff. But I don't know. Oh, did they? They tried to ban Speedy, but Mexican Americans actually like him. Yeah, I actually I remember that Yokiero Taco Bell Chihuahua was like a point of contention for some people too, but sometimes it's hard to tell if like the group being, sort of represented this way is upset about it, or if there's like some outrage on their behalf, like some well-meaning people maybe have a bit of a stick up their butt. I don't know. Yeah, Sylvester's the gringo, so Speedy's the hero, really, in those situations, so I don't know. But, yeah, I don't know. It's tough to navigate some of that stuff sometimes. You don't really know. You feel, when you're a creator, you feel worried you're going to, like, you feel, you don't want to, like, temper your own creative stuff, but at the same time you're always concerned, like, something you do is going to offend somebody somewhere, and it's hard not to let that affect you. Maybe you should let it affect you, but I don't know to what extent. It's like, I don't know where the line is between being true to the art and not a dick. Yeah, Bugs Bunny was terrible with Japanese people in the 40s. Yeah, they made some World War II era stuff that was. At the same time, though, they were making fun of Hitler in some of their cartoons too, or they were criticizing. Yeah, it's a mixed bag of like making fun of Native Americans or the butt of jokes and characters in blackface and things like that. Where nowadays, yeah. Matt says, I think people just like being offended. I think by and large there's a lot of that, yeah. I think there's a lot of offensive stuff, but there's also a lot of people who like make it their hobby to be offended, and I do enjoy Tumblr as like a place to post art, but there've been like instances where people will like not only police the things that I like, the content that I create, but they police the stuff that I don't put in. Like it's like there's some checklist somewhere where I'm like not hitting all the marks, and people are come out of the woodwork to tell you what you're doing wrong by their political standards. So it's that's frustrating. It's a minefield. Onai says, I went to a special screening of stuff Warner Brothers have on lockdown. Their wartime propaganda and Coal Black and the Seven Dwarves was eye-opening, yeah. And then there's Disney with their Song of the South that they kind of want to distance themselves from. War propaganda is pretty terrible. They want to dehumanize the enemy so people won't want to kill them 300 billion degrees. Yeah, to make it easier to hate them. Yeah, the same thing Donald Trump does. Let's all just legitimize our racism. Evil Industrialist says, social media is a neat way to sort human failure into piles. Yeah, if it's useful for anything, I suppose. Lovecraft, yeah, he's another problematic writer. If you've ever read, I think it's like, well, a lot of his stuff, but it's at The Rats in the Walls. He had some racism issues there too, but I mean, it's like, I don't know. For the time, it would have seemed perfectly normal, and now it's not acceptable. It shouldn't be, but I don't know where you begin separating the social politics of the time from the worthiness of the content. Or if you don't, then you just move along and say, yep, well. Let's stop putting his head on trophies for science fiction horror authors. Matt says, what would some of the Lackadaisy characters protest about? Well, clearly at the time, prohibition was probably the biggest, one of the biggest things on the plate, but women achieving the vote in 1920 was also not easily passed through Congress, so it was a very hotly contested thing as well. But I think, by and large, most of the characters, I'm not trying to, like, give my characters a pass or say, yeah, they were different from... But it was largely the underground stuff where you would see racial mingling, where women were suddenly allowed into things like saloons were usually men only prior to Prohibition, and suddenly women were coming out of the woodwork to come and dance and be without a chaperone and smoke and wear dresses that didn't cover their, ankles and stuff. And where even a lot of homosexual performers became very big in the 20s, and obviously jazz took off, and that was primarily an African-American innovation. So, and you'd see a lot of racial intermingling there, and although, in a lot of more legitimate establishments, black performers would come in, and then they'd play for the audience, and then they'd have to go find a different hotel to stay at that, wasn't whites only, which is terrible, but that was the way it worked then. Evil Industrialist says, history tends to be edited in weird ways based on who wants to forget what. Yeah. Yep. We're seeing maybe the tail end of the baby boomer generation kind of making its exit. The succeeding generation moving in and telling you its version of events. Ragog says, I'm curious about something, Tracy. Is there going to be any African American or whatever term makes it politically correct characters, like band members or something? Just wondering by watching Boardwalk Empire. There are some already, but again, it's, they're cats, so I suppose it's hard to tell. But there's no, with Lackadaisy characters, there's no, some, giveaway for, what race or ethnicity a certain character is. I've done human drawings of them, of course, but the Savoy twins are of mixed background. Mordecai is Jewish, of course, and probably would not have been allowed into certain places. Certain businesses and hotels had a anti-Semitic policy. Ben in the band is not white. But in retrospect, I feel like I probably did not populate the cast with as much racial diversity as I should have. But again, I was thinking of it as cats. And then it's like, oh, we'll draw human versions of them, and then yeah. Part of the trouble, of course, comes in when we think of a white character by default. We shouldn't think that way, but a lot of us do, because that's what we were exposed to, and we just kind of pass it along, so. Onai says, but all that objectionable stuff needs to be preserved because it is history, like that recently surfaced letter exchange between a fan and Schultz discussing the ideas of adding a quote-unquote Negro child to Peanuts to normalize his audience to, frankly, the existence of blacks living and doing the stuff we all do. Yeah. It is stuff we shy away from and shouldn't. We need to talk about it because when you pretend it didn't happen, that's how history repeats itself. So the idea is to learn from it and not to imitate it. $300 billion degrees says, cats are often many colors at once. Yes, indeed. A lot of people ask me, like, well, are the characters who are black cats black people, or, you know, are they, if they're, but it doesn't make any sense. There's no correlation there. It's just they're, whatever color they are is a artistic choice based on them being a cat, not on a human. So, like, what would a gray cat be, or, you know, a patchy calico be? It's there's no, like, I didn't go that way because it's not, I don't know, when you're writing something, I'm not trying to, like, gloss over history or racism or anything, which was a big part of the 20s, but in some ways you have to pick your battles, too. You can't make your story about everything. And I picked it to be about these characters and their small existence in a larger world, and so it's not, I did not narrow it in on that. If I had wanted to, you know, tackle racism as a political theme, then I would have gone with characters who, I don't know, you can look at things like Black Sat or Mouse or something, and they codify, you know, certain animals or certain color patterns or whatever, you know, along racial lines. And because it's a part of the story, it's intended to be. But in this case, it's not. So there was no need for that, I felt. More racial diversity, yeah. I think I'm falling behind in the chat here, sorry. Evil Industrialist says, I got a book of typography and logo designs from the 1930s, and it was interesting how much totalitarian aesthetics influenced Art Deco, but the influence tends to be edited out in newer textbooks. Yeah, that's interesting. I actually, like, have a mental association between those two things, Art Deco and totalitarian regimes and politics. But, maybe it's been sanitized since my initial exposure to the art form. I don't know. I still like the look of Art Deco, but yeah, it has political undertones. Resident says, would it be weird that I always saw Ivy as part Asian? Not really for any reason, just kind of because. No. No, I've had people interpret a lot of the different characters as various different races and different types of people than I had drawn them as. When I draw them, I'm not trying to, like, I don't know, I'm not trying to dictate what you're supposed to perceive them as. I'm just doing it for fun, my own fun, but it's part of the fun of them being cats is that you can interpret them as you will. Has Rocky ever read anything by Lovecraft? I think probably not. I think at least not by the time the comic takes place. I think Lovecraft might have been, I don't know that he was widely read in the 20s. It was more like 30s that he was mostly prolific, and then it wasn't until after that really that he picked up steam, I think. So kind of like Tolkien too, like he was kind of an underground thing for a long time until later in the 20th century people started going, oh hey. Ragark says, people tend to mention races and sexual orientations in the Lackadaisy world quite a lot, I believe. Does that make you uncomfortable, or is it just tiresome to repeat yourself to new arrivals coming with the same old questions? It's not tiresome. I'm glad people are interested. I usually take it as a good sign if people are asking about that, but sometimes people come at me with, like, obvious... There's kind of, like, an accusatory tone to what they're asking, like... I don't know. Or they're looking for me to say something that they can then turn into, like, a reason to be mildly offended at, you know, or I don't know. So that can be a little off-putting, but in general, no, I don't mind discussing it. I think it's like, Lackadaisy has really no sexual content at all, so that does get a little like, well, I mean, we can talk about it, because, but it really doesn't have a heck of a lot of bearing on the plot. But for the sake of humoring, you know, the discussion, or just mulling over the characters in a, you know, in a way that delves into them beyond what the story does, then yeah, it's fun. Scruffy says, well, that's the other nice thing about using animals, is that the reader can impose their own ideas onto them. I agree. It's it makes them like they're still human, but they're abstractions to a greater extent, and I think that actually helps in a lot of ways in a story like this that's kind of trying to tiptoe a line between drama and comedy. Like, I think the cats are needed for the levity, otherwise the story would run the risk of taking itself way too seriously. And that the cats are there, I think, is kind of like this constant reminder, like, this isn't that serious. Even though it gets dark sometimes, it's like, I think I don't know. I don't know what I'm saying. There's a point there somewhere that I'm trying to make, I just can't find it verbally. Insane says, quite a few fans imagine Rocky as homosexual. I have never saw that, mainly because of his crush on Mitzi, though I could easily see him going both ways. He's pretty flamboyant, so I can see why. If we're going to go with, like, you know, stereotypes, but certainly not to say that homosexual people are all flamboyant or something, but... He's more demonstrative, I would say, than the average, or than the, like, ideal of a, you know, masculine person at the time. Kind of ironically, you know, the Lion Decker arrow color man was the masculine ideal, sort of, or designed to be that way. And Lion Decker himself was a homosexual man, so, and I do believe it was his partners at times who were, or one of his partners who was a model of his for the man in the various ads that he illustrated. Rocky is expressive, yes, that's the word. Ragar says, well, I don't think homosexual characters have to be flamboyant anyway. Yeah, that was my point, really, was that the... what I was trying to say was that I think I was speculating as to why people might assume that of Rocky, but it certainly does not tell you one way or the other in actuality. Insane says, have you ever seen Road to Perdition? I imagine Ransom as being similar to Tom Hanks from that movie. Really? Why? Onai says, I find it strange you use history as much as you do rather than undo. Not saying it's wrong, just something I noticed. Because sometimes I like to step back further, and it's just easier than hitting Control Z multiple times, or Control plus Z. Or Control Shift Z, rather. I still, even though I've got the, my little radial buttons here on the Cintiq program to change brush size, I still frequently will just go to the brush size menu and do this too, so it's, I don't know, just a, like, muscle memory habit, I guess. Resident says, speaking of just head cannons, oh, it scrolled past too fast, I couldn't read it. Since you're making a holiday picture, can you tell us how all the characters like to spend the holidays? Who's into the Christmas spirit? Who's the grump, apart from Victor? Anyone do anything other than Christmas? What kinds of gifts do they tend to get each other? Depends on like which part of the story you're asking about. But like the present day, they things are a little muted around Lackadaisy, so anyone's celebrating big Christmas holiday, but or getting anyone any particularly fancy gifts. As they've been a little strapped for cash, but I suppose I could probably talk about their childhood would be more. It's Out of all of them, Ivy's probably got the most Christmas spirit. Maybe Rocky too. They tend to be the group cheerleaders, I guess. Does Cactus Friend what? Does Cactus Friend enjoy the lady cacti or the dudely cacti? I don't know. I don't know how cactus gender works, really. Cactus sex. How do cacti reproduce? I don't really, not a botanist, unfortunately. It may be that cactus have female and male flowers on the same plant, so I don't know. Maybe both. Maybe someone can enlighten me. Yeah, some of them get scars for the holidays, I guess. They all get hoops and sticks. Yeah. Little wooden ducks on wheels that you pull along on a string. If they were real cats, I would just get them a box. Insane says, why is Ivy going after Calvin? Rocky seems to be the perfect match for her. I think she and Rocky are maybe too similar. Be disconcerting. Too much upbeat energy all in one cluster. They repel instead of attract. So. So Mordecai is Scar now? Does that make the Savoys the hyenas and Freckle Simba? I sure hope not. I think, sorry if I'm falling behind on chat, it's like Polkadot says, Ghost Duck, Cactus Friend, Uninvited Rooster, and Frothy, the love quadrangle of the century. Yeah, all the quaternary characters are getting together. Recruitment says, cacti appear to usually have all the reproduction parts in the same flower, so there would only be a single gender for cacti. There you have it. Ragark says, it's like you're trying to work here and we're just endlessly rambling about the randomness of the universe. That's alright. That's what the live stream's for. It's to have fun and do some work. You guys are, as always, very entertaining, so can't complain. I appreciate your interest, even when you're asking what the cactus's stating preferences are. And pressure sensitivity is gone. Let's see if I can get it back again. Don't mind the mess I'm making right now. It'll hopefully make a little more sense in a moment. Sorry, yeah, I know me tapping on the Cintiq is probably a pretty tedious noise, but as of yet I haven't been able to control it with my mind, so I'll have to tolerate it. Have I what? Cat songs? Sorry, I missed what songs you were referencing. Tracy, have you any cat songs to add to this that can only be truly described as chat window caterwauling? How about The Love Cats by The Cure? Or The Cat with Two Heads? Oh wait, is that a band or is that a song? I think they're a band and a song. Aquabats, that's it, yep. I think, is it Presidents of the United States that has a funny cat song too? Let me check. Yeah, the kitty song. By the Presidents of the United States. Oh, it is? Well, there you go. I'm sure I have more cat songs somewhere in my pile of music, but I can't think of any right now. Oh, I know a good one. Whiskers by The Boy Least Likely To. Or is it My Tiger, My Heart? Is there, I think that's one of their songs too. Boy Least Likely To. Sorry if my computer just pinged at all of you. What's that insane? You notice possible foreshadowing? There's foreshadowing. I don't know what you're referring to though. The moral of the Great Gatsby was that drivers in the 20s are terrible. Yeah, that's what I got out of it. Insane says, when Victor looks at Calvin and the panel zooms in on his eyes, his pupil lays on Calvin's forehead exactly where Rocky gets a scar. Yeah, that's coincidence. Good eye for detail, though. I'm surprised you even noticed that. But, yeah, it doesn't really have anything to do with Rocky's scar. Rocky's scar being smack in the middle of his forehead has some, maybe you could say minor relevance, but unto itself, really, or unto Rocky's character, but yeah, Polkadot's onto me. He's transforming into Harry Potter. I can only imagine Quidditch would go horribly, horribly wrong. I agree. From a game design perspective. Spiny Flower Manta says, Tracy, did I tell you I ended up buying the 13HG Cintiq? I remember asking you about your Cintiqs. Oh, cool. I didn't know you bought one. How are you liking it? Oh, and hi. I agree totally. Quidditch. My my coworkers and I, who all worked in game development, would revel in tearing it apart every now and then. It was definitely a Mary Sue facilitator more than a game. Thank you, resident. I'm glad you think so. Insane says, will we ever see Ransom Rickaby, or is that too much of a spoiler question? I saw a character in a preview, I think might be him, but I'm not sure. First part I won't answer, and second part is you haven't seen him yet, because I haven't drawn him at all yet in a posted image anyway. Oh, it's not done yet. No, it's got a long way to go. I won't finish it in the stream, but I'll finish it up afterwards and share it with patrons. Maybe I'll share it with everybody. I don't know. We'll see. There's another part to it too that I haven't got to yet, so. Oh, neat. Ragark says, in the Lackadaisy world, would Godzilla look like a giant elf? No. He'd look like Godzilla. Spidey says, is Atlas Godzilla? Yeah. You hit the nail on the head there. Atlas shuffled. Resident says, I don't know if you have time to read comics or anything right now, but are you keeping up with any ongoings, or have you read any good comics lately? Webcomics, I've been keeping up with webcomics. Lots of good ones out there. It's hard to even list them all. I read Family Man by Dylan McConis. I keep up with Cucumber Quest, which is adorable and funny and great color work. I read sorry, my brain's starting to go. Haven't had any coffee in a while. Let's see, what else do I... The Meek and Mari Internum. Definitely worth reading. By Dershinghelmer. Prog Race. It's great. Unsounded. Paranatural. Yeah, Beyond the Western Deep. Like I said, I'm forgetting like a slew of them. Dreamkeepers. It's great. Unsounded. Paranatural. Yeah, Beyond the Western Deep. Like I said, I'm forgetting like a slew of them. Dreamkeepers. It's great. Unsounded. Paranatural. Yeah, Beyond the Western Deep. Like I said, I'm forgetting like a slew of them. Dreamkeepers. What types of comics do you read most? Well, I think foremost I'm attracted to stuff that looks good. I can't deny that the visual has a lot to do with it for me, but stuff that has like lighthearted comedic slant to it. But I like things with like a supernatural tone or little bit of drama, but I tend not to like stuff that's like all drama all the time. And I don't tend toward the gag-a-day stuff. Like I know a lot of probably those get read more than any other types of comic, but it's just not my. I just except for one, which is Womp Comic, which is hilarious. Never fails to make me laugh, so that's Ronnie Filiaz. Resident says, my brother aspires to be Ronnie. I'm not sure if that's a good thing or a bad thing. I don't know. I'm pretty sure he's using the comic to encourage you not to be anything like him, but you'd probably be flattered to hear that. Maybe. I don't know. All I know is it's a hilarious and very relatable comic. If you ever spend any time as a self-loathing hobbyist, then you could probably relate. And I think most of us creative types do that, so. In one form or another. Oh, I do like, Gun Show was a standout in that department, really, as far as gag-a-day stuff goes. It's just, like, so off-kilter that it's just, you have to laugh, so. Definitely marches to the beat of its own drum. But kind of brilliant in that way. If you guys are looking for horror-based stuff, I would recommend Emily Carroll, if you haven't heard of her. They're great short comics with, like, supernatural horror element to them. Very creepy stuff. Kate Beaton, of course, her Hark of Vagrant stuff is great, but I don't think I even need to mention, like, perfunctory to even mention it, because she's just, everybody knows who Kate Beaton is. All of the stairs, by the way, falls down all of the stairs. Takes up the entirety of volume 4 and 5. Oh, Ragark says, I know it's just a tertiary character, but about Sai, is that his full name or is it short for Simon or something like that? Yeah, Silas Resident is correct. Spiny says, I know you do grayscale to make sure everything is right value-wise, but how the hell do you manage perspective and putting the comic together, Tracy? By putting the comic together, do you mean layout, I guess? Or deciding what goes into a panel and what doesn't? Well, that's all done, that's all like planned out ahead of doing the drawing in thumbnail form. I usually will write a draft of the dialogue and then edit that about 1,000 times, and then I'll do thumbnail drawings of like what the page would look like, so that I'm kind of hitting the beats in the dialogue correctly, or at least trying to, that correspond, so that like the dialogue and the art correspond with each other in some fashion, because I will frequently usually edit the dialogue again before I finish the page, but then I do all the drawings and scan them all and lay them out in Photoshop according to my thumbnail drawing. Frequently it changes from what I had originally planned anyway, though, so the thumbnails are just a guideline. As far as perspective goes, I have to, well, I don't know if I should be giving anybody advice on drawing in perspective, because I still mess it up sometimes, and I still tend to rely way too much on like 1-point perspective, but trying to vary that up a bit more these days. I'll either draw guidelines out for myself or use guidelines in Photoshop. Sometimes I eyeball it and then fix it later in Photoshop because I hate drawing with rulers or drawing guidelines and then having to erase them all afterwards. It's much easier to work with them on a separate layer. Or I will model something in 3D so I can get an idea of how I want to draw it, because then I can just move the camera around and figure out what the best perspective is to draw it from, and then kind of decide from there and use that as my perspective guide as well. So kind of multiple different ways of doing everything. Does he dress in monk robes and go killing people? No, he's not that interesting. He plays the trumpet. Not that that isn't interesting, but... Could I do a perspective drawing for you? Yeah, I could do that. Resident says, what 3D program do you use? Studio Max, 3ds Max. My old nemesis. I was wondering when someone was going to suggest Walter did it. Which one? Which TV series? Oh, Breaking Bad. I didn't think the end parts were nearly as good as everybody else seemed to think they were. I actually thought the show reached its peak in around the middle part. Gus Fring really brought something to the show, but. Yeah, it did have some pacing issues, and there were some episodes that seemed like major filler material. I thought the writing was still pretty good, despite the fact that an episode was obviously filler, but yeah. I think that's more of a, like, I don't know if it's a writer's failing or so much as it is just trying to contort something to fit the programming schedule that they have to work with. Arguing on YouTube, that's got to be one of the more futile things I could think of. Akin to self-flagellation, really. Resident says, my issue is the fact that the writers seem to believe that the viewers were complete idiots who needed their hands held the entire way through and insisted on having every single character interaction on screen because no situation could go unresolved or undiscussed between characters. Yeah, I think a lot of shows do that because they're playing for the lowest common denominator. So yeah, but I've heard people complain about the opposite problem with lots of shows too, like I guess probably the most infamous example or the most recent infamous example in recent memory would be the ending of The Sopranos, which I thought was fairly obvious, but everybody else seemed very annoyed that it didn't lay it out for you exactly what happened. So maybe they reacted to the fallout from that and decided, oh, we're just gonna go the opposite direction with this and tie up everything neatly so that you can have all the closure you want and then some. Alright. I think I'm going to add some color to this and clean it up a bit more. And then I'll share the finished result with you guys, but I am starving and so are my cats, so I'm going to wrap it up for this evening. Yeah. I could end the stream like The Sopranos and just black screen it. Thanks for keeping me entertained, guys. You make for excellent conversation. Well, peculiar if not excellent conversation. Entertaining. Thanks, guys. Have a great holiday. Good night.